can expand from here. It's a it's not going to come without a lot of focus and effort. And I think, for many different corporations and for people that are listening to this podcast, they'll want to rethink their role as an L&D professional, um, in helping make that happen. And whether that needs to be in concert, with an HR sort of directive and strategy, or if it needs to be kind of separated for a period of time to help us get through this transition as professionals. I think those kinds of questions should be discussed, because it's it's a time by which the professionals in the learning world, um, may be asked to be to be doing more than what they've been doing in the past. And I think that our people are prepared for it. It just would require some support.
Yeah, it's interesting. So a couple of things. One is as I sort of researched Visa for this, it's an extraordinary organization. It's a massive scale connector of millions of merchants and tens of thousands of banks, and it all happens in astonishing real time, just billions of transactions, right? So it's an incredible scale kind of play. Um, there is a lot of change at work. When you think of how intrinsic the credit card is to the shift that we've made to digital commerce, right, and e-commerce, it couldn't have happened without all that kind of Visa-like infrastructure underneath. And the innovation that's happening in the way that people pay for things and pay each other is really moving apace. And what I love about what you and Carrie Williard, the CLO, at Visa have done there is you've really positioned learning as a way to engage with not just your own teams and your own organization, but your partners and your potential customers and users of your potential technology, the whole fintech movement as well. And you've brought it all together in an effort to really kind of focus it behind the strategy of change for the organization, which I love. And we should watch it really closely, and you should report out on a regular basis, because there are a lot of people thinking about this, but there are not many companies that I'm aware of that are actually really taking action to make learning part of the corporate strategy, not just for employees, but for people outside the firewall as well. It's really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about learning technology. I'm assuming that you buy and implement and have over your career bought and implemented a lot of technology. What do you see today that excites you, and what do you think are
Yep.
the challenges for people buying learning technology today?
Yeah. Let me just start with this one, from how I think about ed tech in terms of definitions perspective. I mean, just so that everybody has context for where I come from when I think about this term. It's not just the shiny objects in the room and the things that people may want to use to sort of gain adoption for a particular use case or task. It's I really think that the umbrella term for this is ed tech is a set of methods that help deliver or augment learning and content at large scale, right? And the scale has to be large enough for the potential for transformation to be the fabric of any learning ecosystem that's being built or being imagined. And I think it's interesting. This particular space has been, for as long as I can remember, has been a growing and burgeoning topic. I mean, I think the digital transformation has only amplified sort of the awareness of it and the need for people to want to be there. And I think the venture capitalists have taken notice. And by all accounts, by 2020, this is it's set to grow even more, 17% per year, growing to something like 252 billion. So there's just a lot of players. But I think when you think of ed tech, it's and why can it be leveraged, and how can it be used from a differentiator perspective today? It's all about how can we provide skill and content with a lower resource base and deliver that learning at greater speeds and variation. And I think if we're successful, it's not that I think there's this fascination with bringing technology in and out, and modifying and changing things over within an annual year, or within over 2 year priority. But I think what we need to be thinking about strategically when it comes to EdTech is that while it has the promise to broaden access to learning through whether it be open source courseware or better
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to reskill, there's that potential is not yet realized. And we really need, as practitioners and professionals, to be asking the suppliers to really reframe their pitches away from them being like isolated methods for delivering solutions and more alignment and more towards alignment with comprehensive skill building. Um, it's so interesting. Having worked in the corporate space for as many years as I've had, you just I think within the past couple of years, I've seen more of my network venture out and do things that are not associated with corporations, whether that be um, going off on their own, being freelance consultants, people offering their services outside of corporations. And I think that's interesting. I think you're starting to see more of that talent and more of that skill set move away from the corporations and being offered as a service. And we could potentially see more of that happen as this tidal wave of learning being a differentiator and connector to large scale business transformations continue to take shape. And this need to rethink what folks in the edtech industry are doing in terms of reframing that towards skill building, I think will only increase the need for there to be alignment across corporations, across the government sector, across suppliers.
So let me unpack that a little bit. So you think you're seeing more of an ecosystem start to evolve, or you would like to see an ecosystem start to evolve where any one vendor, any one piece of technology is clear on its role within a broader ecosystem. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's some good examples of this where this is happening already. And it started with
Yeah.
the massively open online courseware companies that people may be affiliated, understand Coursera, the edXs of the world, even to some degree, General Assembly is doing this. But, they're offering courses in partnership with education institutions and businesses, and they're essentially focused on three things, skills-based credentialing, the relevance to the labor market, and then they're testing the effectiveness and viability of that reskilling where there's incentivized uptake for those solutions that are aligned with the business. I think that level of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation aligned with the social movement is going to create a whole lot more impact when we think about the role that edtech can play, um, especially when we think about how those things connect, um, for corporations and for individuals on their own.
Yeah, I think, I would sort of cynically say that
Yep.
most of the progress that us technologists have made around
Mm-hmm.
supporting learning has really been on the really operational and execution side of scheduling and
Mm-hmm.
publishing and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
distribution and tracking and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I know I rarely see things that actually move the activity of learning forward. So I know Microsoft OneNote had this really cool technology which helps dyslexic readers learn to read more effectively, and they do this by highlighting the word and tracking through the
Mm-hmm.
sentence. It's really interesting, but it was really about helping somebody who had a learning difficulty overcome it. That's a sort of a first order contribution, I think, but I don't see many of those. One thing that you talked about that I do love is I think interestingly, the academic institutions through the first sort of generation of MOOCs really did a lot of thinking about the pedagogy and the user experience for learners, and I really do think they moved the industry forward a lot. Um, do you see anything else that you like that's making those kind of first order improvements or changes, really helping people learn in new ways?
I do. So one thing that we've been kicking around and talking about, and I've started to see happen. And I try to like frame this up in this. What are some things that we're talking about? Maybe we can coin this together. What are some things that are happening that are new school learning? And one that I might attribute to kind of peer to peer social science is this whole arena of things that's happening. What I would call social broadcasting. So, are you familiar, Chris, with the service Twitch? You heard of
Yes,
this?
yes. In the
Yeah.
in the gamers world, right?
It,
It's an extraordinary market that's grown up, part of an extraordinary market that's grown up, where people will actually pay to watch other people um, competing in digital video
yeah.
games. I think Fortnite is
Yeah.
one that people might be familiar with.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, this is a completely intriguing space, and I think for those that don't realize
Yeah.
how much the gaming industry is could have an effect on where there's consumer adoption around learning and how people may want to engage in learning if you think demographically in the future. Just a little bit of background on Twitch. So the reason why I say this is new school is there's a stat off the top of my head that I remember back in 2018 that where, if you were to ask somebody, what's the platform that has the most active streamers? And, most people might say, YouTube or something like a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live. And you'd be wrong. And you'd be wrong probably by about an order of 3x, 4x, where YouTube might have, something along the lines of 500,000 active streamers on a quarterly basis, where Twitch has um, over well over a million on a quarterly basis. And this is a company that's owned by Amazon. If folks want to follow that back to sort of like where the parent company sits, but it's an interesting platform. It's like you say, it's live video. It's what I would call social broadcasting. It's primarily grown up through this ability for an expert to share their knowledge in live video format, and have people from anywhere really kind of tap into that, understand, ask questions, be in real time. But what it's doing to the industry is interesting, and I think it has a lot of potential implications if you think really provocatively towards 10, 15 years from now. It might not be that long, but um,
Yeah.
there's some incentives for people to be rewarded. If you think about this particular industry and the people that are teaching, those are instructors, those are facilitators, those are experts that are doing real time peer to peer sharing. There's the potential there to reward, and that's happening already. It's a concept called micro tipping, and people are kind of rewarding people for their expertise. And just they could get it for free, but they do it on their own. There's it's based, in a lot of cases there's an immutable record of things that are earned. So people are you know um, being awarded things. They're doing things on those platforms to showcase skill and
Mm-hmm.
to help drive knowledge transfer, and that will likely be something that is recorded in the Web 3.0 view of this on a blockchain somewhere, where it's portable, right? This kind of stuff is happening outside of an LMS, right? Take us back. This is not stuff that's happening on LMS. This is real learning is happening on platforms like this, and then all along this time, there's a whole virtual economy that people are trading things. They're trading assets, whether that be the money that they just received along whether it be cryptocurrency or otherwise. And what it's doing is it's starting to create celebrities in a lot of these areas. I mean, you mentioned Fortnite. There's a popular streamer that people would know. His profile name is Ninja, but he's got a large following, and people really look to him not just for entertainment, but to learn certain things about certain topics. And you can reimagine a world where you've got people out there teaching concepts that aren't yet you know produced and developed into a nice, beautiful video, but are hopping onto something like a Twitch for the future to teach a host of individuals that are interested across the globe to learn on, the next generation topic. Maybe it's something with distributed ledger databases, and they're not going to get that from, potentially like, a Pluralsight or even your own internal corporate content store. They're going to get that potentially from somebody who's got this level of expertise externally, and it just happens. It happens within a moment's time. It happens, over the course of the next several weeks. And if we can start to tag that and connect that to the ability to stack that learning into some level of, I'll loosely call
Yeah.
it a credential or some way to advocate for that. You've done this. You've done it from a particular individual that people sort of respect and would vouch for, and now that can be applied and carried towards the next sort of opportunity for you. That's a whole different type of learning than I think most of us are used to, but it's coming.
Yeah, and so this is a world that is much more organic, right? Than the first thing that I've already observed in enterprises and organizations is that the expertise is no longer kind of at headquarters in the heads of a few very, very smart people. Expertise is necessarily being built up across the ecosystem at all different points. Like because people are taking the company's products and putting them to work in a particular situation and building their own local expertise about how best